All right, welcome to the second episode of Warhammer: An Elaborate History. In the last session, we covered some very fundamental aspects of the 40k universe, such as Chaos Gods, the Xenos races, with the old ones, Necrontyr, Orcs, and Eldar. And now we're going to be getting to the second part. So mankind ends up taking to the stars with the fall of the Eldar Empire. Without anyone really holding hegemony, it is now mankind. We started off with primordial ooze, but we're in there, and we're making a lot of progress. And this happens in the year 20,000, more or less. I mean, maybe a little bit leading up to that. And it's probably the only happy time in the human timeline. There really isn't another good period for them that they're not fighting for their lives, fighting each other. So everything's going great, but of course there's that very, very cliche trope of the betrayal of artificial intelligence. Okay, so just like any other science fiction, of course the robots come to betray. And mankind was using some vast amount of AI-supported machines in their flight across the stars. I mean, I don't know too much directly about it. Very little is known about this age, but it doesn't take a big imagination to really see how artificial intelligence could make space travel safer. I mean, if you don't have to send people into space and you can just send an autonomous lander, why wouldn't you? So I do speak with a bit of joy with this period, because although the problem is cliche, the solution is not. What mankind decides at this point now is that AI will never be allowed in another human machine on penalty of death, which is fair considering I don't know the details of the amount of destruction, but it was enough to almost end us. 20,000 years of recorded history, and could have been over like that. This period is now, I think the last period was the dark age of technology, but now we're in the age of strife, and this is the beginning of the bad, and it only gets worse. It really only gets worse. So all across the stars, mankind is being preyed upon by aliens. Slanesh's death cry ripped the galaxy asunder and destroyed all stable warp routes, leaving everyone isolated, an easy prey to whatever marauding hordes, green, blue, purple, whatever you name it. And so mankind at this point develops a very keen sense of xenophobia, and this is huge. Okay, this will be deciding their policies for the next 20,000 years. But time moves pretty slow. That's what I like about Warhammer. At its best, nothing changes. And on Earth, the situation was grim. You basically had these techno-barbarians running the show. Earth is an irradiated wasteland. I believe in this. No. Yeah, Earth is like an irradiated wasteland. The oceans have all boiled away. And wherever there is civilization, it is locked in a constant struggle of resources with others. So you have the techno-barbarians. And this gets into a little bit of sociology here with material culture and non-material culture. And this is a huge kind of display of how material culture can shape a warlord. So you have these warlords just running around, holding it down, and looks pretty grim. mankind is isolated to worlds, and even on those worlds, they are stuck with themselves, which isn't good. There was a country, or a kingdom, or a territory, or a state, perhaps, that had realized how to rule well, how to really get an edge on the techno-barbarians surrounding them. And perhaps you could call these guys techno-barbarians. It's really only fitting that even the protagonists be recognized as being confined by their surroundings. And you had a council of psychers. There's more than a dozen, maybe hundreds. And what they would do is they figured out how to reincarnate. They could leave their bodies, enter the warp, and then be reborn as a child or something. I'm not sure what they look like on the other side. But instead of just being devoured and having their souls flayed away by the things that live there, they happen to get through. They happen to go all the way through. And so you are probably looking at one of the very few across trillions of worlds situations where there's a little bit of stability. And with that stability, they did incredible things. However, nothing lasts forever. And they realized that the reincarnation process was not taking. They would go for the swim through the warp, and they just wouldn't come out the other side. There was something in the waters hunting them. And so their entire way of life wasn't just at risk, it was ruined. And so they get together, and what do they come up with? Suicide pact. Each of the surviving psychers kills themselves at the same time. And they each enter their souls into the warp. And during this massive swim, you know, the predators, there was a feeding frenzy, and I don't know how many got through. I wouldn't imagine most of them did. But those that did come through were reborn as the emperor of mankind. Every virtue, every tenet, every strength that mankind stands for is found in the emperor. Of course, he wears a golden set of armor. Of course, he's super tall and super strong and super smart. But he is humanity's salvation. There is an extensive debate to be had in regarding the emperor's true power level. I would put him, well, actually, I'll let the emperor, so I will allow the emperor to display his power level to you. And the emperor was also a genius. I think perhaps beyond being strong, he was smart. Maybe that's why I like him so much. He's a Gordon Freeman hero, kind of a nerd, but of course he's too much of a Chad. Anyways, he makes the Thunder Warriors, and these guys are, you know, they're kind of a shard of the Emperor in a way. They've been used. I think they were grown or perhaps modified, but you got these guys with these awesome plumes and these proto bolters and very, very archaic armor. And the Thunder Warriors took over Earth. They had a jolly show of things, and this unified, you know, body, one by one, started snowballing until Terra, which I should be calling it Terra, not Earth, ends up becoming all together. And so the Emperor of Mankind takes to the stars to reunite everyone, to bring them all back into the fold. But the first major planet, and I think it's the closest planet to us, is Mars. Mars has, for the longest time, been run by the Mechanicum, which is a priestly order. They worship the Omnissiah. The Omnissiah is, is Deus ex machina, God from the machine. They believe that every single machine has a spirit some sort of will, a personality, what have you, but they're not inert. They're not just tools, they're beings. And this is in one part fiction, but in many parts true. As we talked about earlier, when AI was no longer allowed, what sort of solution do you use for computing? What computer is capable of processing, if not for an AI, but what's the answer? This one right here. And it's not just a, you can have people working machinery, but the idea is to have the machinery autonomous. So everything has a little piece of the human mind in it, or perhaps other brains, but humans are, there's so many more of those than anything else. And what you get, I mean, the most typical application of this technology is the servitor. A servitor is going to be a person that has fallen low on their luck. Maybe they're a criminal. Maybe they've been captured. Maybe the Mechanicus just decided they need more servitors. So they just start snatching people off the street. And they are lobotomized to the point where they only really remember the most essential functions, such as heart rate, breathing, temperature control. Digestion is slowed down to a crawl. The flesh itself is almost, this process isn't described, but seeing the result over all these years makes me believe that they've been not mummified, but that their skin itself has received some sort of like hardened or material to make it more like leather, less like skin. And they get all these robotic attachments to them to serve whatever tasks they would have. If you have a gunner servitor, instead of an arm, he's just gonna have a huge cannon sticking out of his socket, and he's gonna have, you know, a targeting reticule. And so that's what their solution is. Even las rifles, the standard weapon used in most engagements, has a little targeting computer in it or something to help it out. And sometimes it's just there anyways. I mean, there's one book, one of my favorites, called 15 Hours, where the farm boy started praying to the water pump. And now this isn't like a Matrix or like a control box or anything. Like these are like a couple of bumpkins out there in the wild. And so, you know, he's pumping the water pump, and he's praying to the machine spirit within the water pump. And is there one in the water pump? I don't know. If there was, it would be silly, but that's Warhammer for you. If there wasn't, it kind of shows this line where dogma and actual technical insight are really blurred at this point, because of the dark age of technology. Creating new technologies is more or less forbidden. Those that are created are they're actually recovered from fragments of ancient human technology. So if it's ancient and you find an STC unit, you can do whatever you want with it. That's fine. But if it's new and you come across it, you better be careful, because Xenos technology doesn't use machine spirits. A lot of times they will use AI or something just as horrifying. So the Mechanicus worship the Omnissiah, and there is a shard of the Omnissiah on Mars. It is called the Dragon of Mars, and it is their source, I would say, of inspiration, awe, and terror. Believe it or not, and it's taken me many volumes to get through this, the Dragon of Mars was a Catan. It was actually like a fragment of the Catan from old. And so that's why these themes of metallurgy and technology, and they ended up, just even as the Catan was sleeping beneath the world, it was able to influence those sentient minds around it and kind of churn them towards it. So the Emperor came to Mars and slew the Dragon of Mars to show that he was omnipotent. Perhaps the Dragon of Mars was a defender of the Mechanicus. Perhaps the Dragon of Mars was a terror. But neither way, the Martians, and yes, they are called Martians, but they're not green little men. They decided that the Emperor was a big deal. And the Emperor, I don't know how he did it, but he convinced them that he was the Omnissiah. Maybe just in the feeding of the Catan. Maybe that's how that came to be. Just that sheer tenacity. And so the Emperor at this point is above Catan power level. So you've got Chaos Gods, you've got Catan, and then you've got the Emperor right in between. And he talks to them, and they end up becoming, I would say, nearly more quintessential to the Imperium of Man than the Imperium of Man itself. You see, on Mars, there are massive manufactorums. For the most part, the Martians were unified. Of course, there were some holdouts that had to be purged by the Emperor, but you end up getting like two. They're not the same cult, even though they try to seem. You have, oh, I got ahead of myself. The Emperor is not recognized as a god yet at this point. However, the Omnissiah is recognized as a god. And so the Emperor allows the Martians to worship, even though he has forbidden it across wherever his domain. It's a purely secular domain. He doesn't want anyone getting any funny notions about gods because gods usurp kings. Or maybe he was just really secular. But it would stand to reason that he wouldn't want any competition. And so he gave the Martians some competition, and they took it in stride. But they build shit in Mars. I mean, that's really what they do. They build shit. They design shit. They look at shit, but they build it. So perhaps contradictory to what I had said earlier about the repercussions of the Dark Age of technology, the Emperor commissioned them to create a fleet of ships, weapons, armor systems, etc., for the Great Crusade that would be coming to go across the stars. Not just the solar system, not just a couple of systems, but the whole galaxy. That was the plan. Whole galaxy under their domain. And he ends up starting the Primarch project. The Primarch project. So the Emperor is a condensed version of all that is good in mankind. But the Primarch project took every individual strand of his being and spread it out across 20 different individuals that were vat grown. These were the Primarchs, his favorite sons. And at the risk of spoiling revelations that have taken me decades to uncover, the Emperor made a dark pact with the powers of chaos. With Nurgle, Khorne, and Slaanesh, they each sought to run him asunder. But how? How could they manipulate him? By giving him the key to creating the Primarchs. And I guess it's kind of contradictory because the Emperor was created without the help of the gods, even though they did kind of speed things up a little bit. But he could not create the Primarchs without their help. I'm not sure why exactly that is. Perhaps it's just to move the plot along, but I typically like overthinking things to the point where I can find a solution. So I will need to find a solution to that. And right after that, the Emperor said, fuck you, fuck you, fuck. And he told the gods off, and they were not happy about it. They made a pact. And they took the Primarchs. They scattered them across the stars, one by one by one. And they could have just erased the Primarchs from existence. They could have destroyed them. They could have even snuffed them out. But they decided something far more sinister. And with that, the Emperor's a little dumbfounded. I'm sure he felt a great degree of separation anxiety. He created 20 legions of warriors that would represent the Primarchs. They would, if the Primarchs were the Emperor's children, these legions of warriors, the Adeptus Astartes, Space Marines of the Imperium of Mankind, they would be the Primarch's children. And so even with a copy of a copy of a copy, a copy of a copy, yeah, a copy of a copy of a copy, you still have that shred of omnipotence that the Emperor more or less holds on to. And they take to the stars in hope of recovering the Primarchs. And with this, I would like to do a brief recap on everything we covered. Mankind takes the stars, year 20,000. I mean, we've taken the stars before that, but we took the stars. Then the stars were taken from us with the death of Slaanesh. I'm not entirely sure how the timelines intersect, but I do know that Slaanesh's death did contribute to some of the warp storms that destroyed the connectivity between the human civilizations. There was a bit of prosperity before that, but eventually the dark ages of technology really just sent everything asunder as the robots betrayed us. Then came the Age of Strife, and we got the Techno-Barbarians, okay? The Emperor defeated the Techno-Barbarians with the Thunder Warriors. The Emperor went to Mars to fight the Dragon of Mars, which he did. He got the Martians on his side. They decided that they would worship him, and they are the only ones allowed to. No one else is allowed to worship. And the Emperor made Primarchs. Primarchs are shards of the Emperor. And the Primarchs were stolen. So we're going to be looking next at the search for the Primarchs. I really do enjoy any love.